there is a need for, like, there absolutely is a need for, like, some sort of secular messaging for the right. Because
Yeah,
because I
definitely.
really don't like the direction the American right is going. I really don't like how there's just more and more of this emphasis on religiosity. This whole idea that we need, like, the to establish the supremacy of the Christian religion in government as the solution to society's problems. I really despise that. But
Well, I think unfortunately with the actions of the secular left, as well as I would hesitate to say religious left, but the secular left, it's like they're literally just pushing everybody into the hands of guys like Andrew Wilson. I mean,
yeah,
Andrew Wilson is I mean, I have to say that I agree with a lot of what Andrew Wilson has to say, not the religious part, but the parts of what's wrong with the left and what's wrong with guys like Destiny and what's going on. This sort of insanity, which is honestly, it's just violent insanity,
yeah.
being promoted. The
Speaking
stats
of
is,
which, I did have the displeasure of actually meeting that guy earlier this year.
oh yeah,
Yeah, AFL actually hosted an event for him with
yeah. I
him.
did the artwork for it. Actually, I did the artwork for the flyers for it back then.
Yeah. Yeah, we basically had Destiny on down at the University of Tennessee, and we had the opportunity to have people debate him, myself included. I got into a discussion slash argument with him about individual rights and, like, gun control and stuff, and of course, in, like, typical leftist fashion, the guy just pretty much discredits uh,
Mm.
the notion that, like, people have, like, a private right to own firearms. Um, but that's not, like, the most egregious thing about this guy, though. Like, I think that like, obviously, I think Destiny's views are abhorrent, but there's a difference between merely having abhorrent views and being a perverse kind of personality. Just like a really nasty and disgusting human being. And this guy in Destiny has proven himself to be like this on multiple occasions now. So to such an extent that I don't think that I really don't think that this guy is a talker or a speaker, worth his salt, worth entertaining, worth being invited to the table for conversations, because he's just such a horrible human being.
Well, there's a core problem. Like you brought up gun rights,
Yeah.
Second Amendment. There's a core problem with these people. And Hassan Piker's the same thing. Fundamentally, they do not believe. They will talk circles around it. They'll deny it. They do not believe in sort of the Enlightenment period principles or concept that formed the West. I won't even just say America. I would say what happened even in Europe around that time period. The 1776, if you will. They simply reject that outright. The bottom line is that, and I think most liberals, honestly, whether they want to admit it that or not, that they kind of really just reject that fundamental structure. So no matter what your art, there's always a level. I find a level of complete dishonesty in everything they're talking about. They are. I wouldn't even say that they were, Jacobites. I wouldn't even say that. It's something else. It's something even more sinister, where they're if you just look at how they are, you've got not. I'm going to focus on Hassan for a second. He's a guy that's worth millions of dollars, but he talks like a socialist all the time. It
Oh yeah.
seems almost like a scam. Like
Well,
this is a
it's
scam.
almost like he's, like, adopted the very idea of being a champagne socialist as his entire, like,
Yeah,
personality, which is really
yeah,
fucking funny because, like, those of us on the right have been making fun of leftists and socialists for being champagne socialists for decades now. And then all of a sudden,
yeah.
this guy comes along and decides to embody that. Right? He basically is the champagne socialist. It's
Right.
amazing how they can't see the irony of the way in which they're existing. It's
Well, I would argue that he and Destiny almost endorse it without openly endorsing it. Like there's almost a level of like, are all of their sycophant followers sitting there thinking someday I will be a millionaire socialist, And I there's a lot of in history. It seems like there's also a lot of actual precedents for the fact that this has always been the case, where these guys that talk about, oh, the people, we've got to distribute wealth to the people, but first you got to give it all to me, and then later on I'll take care of the people. And it's almost like if you look at every bit of history I read about, whether it's the Soviet Union, communist China, it's like the people that took over became really wealthy and said, we'll get to you later. We'll get this wealth to all you guys later. And it seems like it's been a constant thing. And they justify it. Then they go about like justifying it. Bernie Sanders, the same thing. And I was just thinking about I remember like Oliver Cromwell. I remember one of the things I was reading about how like they, the church, the Catholic Church is a bunch of full of people that are taking our money. They're rich. They got all this gold. We have to get this gold back, and distribute it. And then like as soon as all the priests were killed and whatnot, and they took over, it's all the people going, hey man, what was all that gold that was in the churches? What happened to all that gold that was in all the Catholic churches? Don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. And it's almost like there is this threat. I've been trying to distill things down to a more of a social psychology than a political thing, right? I like Godsod because when he talks about like the anthropology of the human mind and the anthropology of social structures, and this ties into me when I was in college in the 1980s and I took this course, political anthropology. They try to break things down by how people really, the human race really lives, the way it really functions, the way humans form themselves into groups psychologically. And I think that that's what we're truly like we're kind of facing right now. I at some point in Western history, in Western civilization, the era we tend to think where they got it right, where the psychology, the philosophy, the politics kind of merged into something. The French clearly got it wrong with the French Revolution, but the French seem to get everything wrong.
Yeah.
That there is a certain psychology of people that you want to run things, or to at least be mostly in charge, even though you might entertain like liberal thought or what, to sort of expand and make sure we're being flexible enough to adjust to situations. But these people want to get away from that core stuff that actually made the United States grow into the country it is and into the freedoms we have. They just want. I always feel that, and that going back to the Second Amendment thing, that guys like this say, that Second Amendment thing is going to be a problem for me later on when I want to accumulate even more stuff, and then say, I'm also your leader. You working class people need to listen to me, but first you got to let me accumulate more stuff. And then I'm going to make rules about what who you can and can't criticize. I'm going to tell you that, your children are my children, and as a parent, I can tell you that's the one thing I think the left really screwed up on, this sort of thing of like, almost trying to get the school system to separate the kids from the parents. And that was one of the big, like, I think boners that they did the last like year or two and that has to do a lot with the trans stuff, but it's not even just the trans stuff. These people openly saying, you parents, you're too stupid to bring your kids up. You need to let us do it. And I think that's something that was it was almost like a telltale thing about where their minds really were, and it's not like Destiny's Dad of the Year. I mean, from what I'm understanding at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's probably worthwhile to take a look at this video clip that was brought to my attention by someone on the AFL Discord channel, because it's quite telling about Destiny's. Oh, that's a cute cat.
Oh, that's my buddy Iro. He's like my best pal. We just started to let them out into outside, and it's been a good thing because they were kind of like chewing through, scratching things and whatever. In a minute, we let them outside for a little bit to run around and go nuts. They've just calmed right down. But he's good. He's kind of my buddy. My wife has another cat. We have another cat. We have 4 cats now. One stray one that just sat in the house.
Yeah.
Zuko. We got Iro, Zuko, and Tyson.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw this video clip with Destiny, but it's
The
quite good.
Piers Morgan.
Yeah, on Piers
Piers.
Morgan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
is that what it is?
yeah, yeah, the one on
Yeah,
Piers Morgan.
I have been kind of almost religiously watching Piers Morgan because I like to see the train wrecks that come on his show
Yeah,
and realize where there's a zeitgeist out there of people who are outside the. People would consider you and me extreme in a lot of ways,
yeah.
and really, I look at it saying, actually, you know what we are? We're actually not extreme at all.
Well, yeah,
It's just that people.
it's interesting because I remember because Piers Morgan, in my view, is just another leftist, right? The guy
Yeah,
wants big government solutions. He is very much against American culture in the sense that he's against like the Second
yeah,
Amendment, the right to bear arms, and armed citizenry in general. I remember his interview with Ted Nugent back in the day, and honestly, I loved Ted Nugent in it because like his responses were so fiery. Like the guy was just a complete firebrand for
yeah,
an armed citizenry, and like Piers Morgan is just like he thinks he's so clever. He's like, well, like what? Oh, if gun control would like I don't remember if this is exactly what he said, but something said something along the lines of if gun control would help make your community safer and like protect kids, then why wouldn't you do it? And like Ted Nugent's just saying like if you want to disarm me based on what someone else did, then you can drop dead because I'm not in any way like he's, and I don't know if this is the exact way he said because this was like decades ago, but he says something along the lines of I'm not responsible for the actions of other people. Of course, Pierce, thinking that he's intelligent, says something along the lines of, "Oh yes, and people do drop dead. Little children drop dead." It's like, but again, all he's doing is he's further hammering home this idea that somehow the innocent person who hasn't done anything wrong, who hasn't in any way contributed to the deaths of these poor children, who hasn't committed any crimes of his own, is somehow culpable in the commission of crimes committed by people that they have nothing to do with. It's like no different from the kind of reasoning or rhetoric that is involved when people try and hold anyone accountable for the actions of anyone else that they have nothing to do with. It's like, oh, well, you're a Christian. Well, like, how could you? How can like? Why do you not like? It's like the kind of disingenuous atheist argument. Where atheists are like, oh yes, well, being a Christian means then that you have to answer for like the Crusades or some shit, or like
right.
yeah, or when a Christian is like, oh, you have to answer for the actions of like Joseph Stalin because you're an atheist and he was an atheist. It's just so fucking stupid. See, the work I did that I'm the most proud of on my YouTube channel was that video of repudiation of nihilism, where I go through and present these really complex philosophical arguments for why a nihilistic viewpoint is not just is not just bad for humanity, but also that it's self-defeating. It's literally a self-refuting idea. And I'm very proud of that because I present very good arguments that I have yet to see anyone really grapple with and defeat or even attempt to defeat. The problem is only about like 2% of people that watch that video watch all the way through.
Yeah,
Because it's like
yeah. Well, it's a lot of like we're in a really awkward. We're like a minority within a minority within a minority.
yeah,
In the whole thing, saying that you're like an atheist and a conservative puts you in this tiny little hole in the whole scheme of things because everybody's like well no because the whole zeitgeist has been created around this false dichotomy and the whole like I feel like everybody has fallen into it and has been in it for a long time, which is why the whole thing with Charlie Kirk, it's like why is all of a sudden all these kids suddenly become really religious? Well, the only people offering a really serious rebuttal of the destinies of the world, right? Of this sort of like this wokeism has been the Christian right. I mean, I don't see. I mean, AFL. I was hoping there's going to be more happening there. Where there's, hey, look, we also rebut that. When you see that the Constantine, not Constantine, yeah, say Constantine Christian, the trigonometry guys, even with them, there's this element of like what's his name there? He started to do the woke right thing, which I thought was so stupid. James Lindsay. There's still this element of like, no, what you are the liberals that allowed all of this stuff to happen in the first place. You're not really a rebuttal. because there are some fundamental problems with where you are, what your philosophy is, that allows the left to grow and become so crazy and infect things, you know? And there's not really a strong secular right that's pushing back on base philosophy. And I feel that someone like Andrew Wilson, what's happened, if you ever listen to him argue, I don't know how many times if you've heard him argue a lot of things, but he really doesn't bring religion into his arguments, which is why I think he's been effective. He's been bringing in base, like logic, base premises, and deconstructing guys like Destiny, deconstructing these guys on base philosophical things. You know,
one thing I have noticed, however, is that he can be a bit of a coward when it comes to actually being challenged on his views. Like, he'll attempt to like evade actually addressing the viewpoint.
Oh God! Oh, he's a master of evasion. Oh, in fact, that's the thing that drives. That's the parts that irritate me about him. Was it's not even just it's obfuscation. It's almost like as minute he's getting some pushback, it's like he's throwing out the freaking tracer flares.
Yeah, he's not even trying to address the point. Yeah, I saw a snippet where someone was asking him, you know, if he believed that the world was only 6,000 years old and why, you know, and he's like doing whatever he can to like not actually address the point. Is like, this isn't relevant, blah blah blah. It's like, well, it actually kind of is, because you're here saying that evolution is wrong, so present the evidence for the alternative point of view.
what he's very good at, and Destiny, by the way, Destiny actually does the same thing, which is what he's very good at. He's very good at making the point, but making the topic of the conversation suddenly not the topic of the conversation when it's starting to look bad.
You know, it no longer serves him, but it's because Andrew Wilson is just as disingenuous as Destiny is. He's just as dishonest. He's a hack. And that's the problem, is like, we do have a bunch of these hacks, and we can call them out. But ultimately, what is needed is not these like these polemicists. What is needed is what you alluded to earlier, which is a real, meaningfully sound philosophical base for for an ideological bulwark against religious authoritarianism and secular authoritarianism. Right? We need a secular right, or we need, well, a left that is not left anymore. It's which by that definition, it precludes it from being the left. But the problem is that we're not going to find this even from the Andrew Wilsons, even though like he's not using religion directly in his argument. He's still deeply religious, and it will do whatever he can to avoid any line of reasoning that will lead to lead to discrediting it. You know, it's at the end of the day, all these people, they're part of various death cults. They're just part of a bunch of different death cults. Like the theocrats in the world want everyone to live as slaves to their tyrant god, and the authoritarians simply want that tyranny to exist on Earth. It's really
well. What I hear out of what Andrew Wilson does and how he takes apart leftists is he basically uses their fundamental arguments against them in a way that they don't. It's like a judo kind of maneuver, which is what I do like about what he does, because he'll just, you know, one of the things I heard him argue, and it's a great point, and I'm sure you're aware of this anyway from just thinking about things as a rational person. And he was talking, I can't remember who it was. He might have been on just a TikTok thing or something. He was arguing with somebody. And he was talking about the fact that, you know, leftists say that, you know, basically morality is subjective. Everything's subjective. Yeah. It's all subjective based upon popular belief, popular will, blah, 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 whatever. And what he argues back against them, and rightfully so, says, well, if it's all subjective, why shouldn't it just be my religion? Yeah. And, you know, be my subjective religion. You know, why isn't that the authoritative thing that we're supposed to be going by? And it's a lot more history of religion than there is of what you're talking about to go by on all this stuff.
Yeah, so that is the fundamental problem with most secular people that I run into in general, is they all wholeheartedly swallow, you know, like line, hook, and sinker, this whole notion that, oh yes, ethics is subjective, therefore there's no and they think, oh yeah, that's a great position to adopt because that discredits the supposed moral objectivity of religious ethics. Great. Now we can, because morality is subjective, homosexuals can be free to be homosexuals, and we can all just, be happy and gay together. Amazing.
Mm.
But the downside with that, however, is you then have no argument against why it would be wrong for the religious to impose their views. Because if morality is subjective, it's just your preference to not have their views imposed on you, and it's their preference to impose their views on you. Right. You've rejected the notion that either of these preferences can be right. So now it just boils, like, we've removed the very notion of validity and rectitude from the conversation and left no recourse for humanity but force. It's literally just becomes my feelings or your feelings. Well, I happen to be stronger, so I'm going to impose my feelings, and you'll have to just deal with it. Bite the curb. Yeah. It's that's the fundamental problem with this reasoning. This whole line of reasoning to just basically remove the very notion of truth out of the realm of possibility in the in the ethics conversation. Because basically what we end up doing then is we basically lose any possibility. I'm repeating myself, but they de facto lose the argument. The moment they do that, they make themselves lose the argument. They embrace the losing of the argument.
And they don't even seem to understand that they're doing it. That's the thing I've noticed. Like, and they'll talk about something like a subjective thing. You talk about homosexuality or trans or whatever, and then you say, okay, well, I think that as a, and it's going to sound terrible, and I just, disclaimer. Well, but as a male, that I think I should just be able to take whatever woman I want. Why isn't that? Why don't I have a right to just do that? Why not? What's this rape thing?
Yeah, I mean, when we can talk about Alex O'Connor's view of ethics, and that's actually in part what my video was responding to. The repudiation of nihilism was responding to Alex O'Connor's ethical emotivism framework. Well, in that video, one of the things I mentioned is, well, in what way would the desire of a violated woman not to be raped, in what way is that like if ethics is just a mere matter of taste, if it's literally just preferences, then the situation is literally she desires not to be raped, the rapist desires to rape. Okay,
yeah,
so
who's right?
What? It's the like we've removed from the possibility of reason any reason to conclude that there are reasons for her not to be raped, and reasons for the rapist to refrain from raping or to be punished for his action. And also, we've removed from the realm of possibility any reason not to join in and participate. So the problem is that when you argue that you cannot derive an ought from an is, when you argue that there are no shoulds and should nots, that there's no such thing as moral truth, and it's all just preferences, then what then? Like, what sort of a state have we left humanity in as a result of taking from us our most important faculty? Like the capacity to understand right from wrong, the desire to live a better life. Because there's no such thing as a better life. It's all subjective. Oh, it's just your preferences and my preferences. It's
well, in fairness, Andrew Wilson, he does say he asserts force doctrine. He says that it's all about who can actually force their views. So he's already stating the authoritarian standpoint, right? He already has
he's just embraced being a thug. He's embraced being a gangster. Like
there's an honesty there. Like there's a level of honesty there. Okay, well that's your standpoint. And he goes, and if you can fight back, you can fight back. But I don't, but if I can dominate you, I dominate you, and I make you do what I want. And so my problem with the leftists is they're like, well, no, you can't do that either. Well, then how are you got these preferences that you want? How are you gonna assert these preferences? If somebody else is willing to, and this is the whole thing. The thing I would like to dig into maybe in a different session is he had this blowout with Tim Pool over rights. That rights don't exist. Rights only exist because of by force, And one of the things I would have loved to have argued with Andrew is that Tim Pool just was. I don't really think I don't think he has the basis he thinks he has in
Tim Pool
philosophy.
overestimates his own abilities and his own
Yeah, yeah,
importance continuously.
yeah.
I don't find him very impressive. I never even watch any of his stuff anymore.
No, I watch him quite a bit, and I so things I like about him, but I realize that he's an uneducated guy who then tries to get into the realm of philosophy without ever. I could tell he's never been through the rigor of let's say, a college debate session
Yeah.
where, like, you know what I mean? And so he's like, "Oh, I got the answer. I just looked it up and I got the." It's like, well, there's more to it than that, and I don't. Because my thing was where he's wrong with Andres is like the point of rights, the point of accepting rights at all. Because if you're going to talk about force doctrine, the whole idea of recognizing rights is the idea of trying to stop violence. To say, let's come to an agreement about everybody's individual rights, a certain social philosophical thing whereby we don't use force and violence to hurt each other. That violence would be the last result for somebody who's chosen not to, understand these objective rights or this objective ideas of these certain things that aren't really preferences. They're like, because they reject the idea of natural rights. Like Andrew rejects. There's only rights that God wrote down in the Bible, supposedly, I guess, whatever. Which I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah, of course, because God
okay.
possesses.
Can you
the
get God
power
here to
do
tell me
so.
that? I want him in person to tell me that, Andrew. I want him in person to tell me that. I don't care about like 4,000-year-old texts that nobody knows who even wrote them. It's like get God to tell me that, because I could point to Thomas Jefferson. He existed. We know that. We understand where his mind was at with all this stuff. And we understand where this whole philosophy of the Enlightenment period came from. We understand its history.
Yeah, but like even then though, like if God came down and asserted to me directly what man's rights were and what man's rights were not, the next question would be okay, and by what authority, oh being, do you make these assertions? Like, where do you get your lawful, just, royal, legitimacy from? Like, what is it that makes you the legitimate arbiter of man's rights?
Well, I would assume that the answer they would give on that, though, is that because he is the creator of the universe, therefore he gets to say what everything is.
Yeah, and okay, so in what way does possessing this power of creation impute upon one the authority to dictate the lives of others?
Well, I think I would call it paternal authority. So like, there's always that thing of like, the parents, and this has been an ongoing sort of parents asserting absolute authority over their children, right? Like, I brought you into this world, I'll take you out, kind of thing. Bill Cosby had a line.
Yeah, but that is actually exactly what the Enlightenment philosophy was rebelling against.
Right.
That
right.
very notion. Right.
That paternal notion.
It's I mean, because that's pretty much the entire basis behind Sir Robert Filmer's argument in Patriarchia, is this idea that, okay, so all authority is parental authority. Since God is the father of all, he is the ultimate authority, and the man is authority over his wife and his children, just by virtue of that, and the monarch is like the father essentially of a nation. It's right. His whole idea was parental authority, but that all falls apart the moment you accept any limits to parental authority. Filmer did not accept limits to parental authority. However, Locke very insightfully points out, well, we don't let parents murder their children. We don't let them rape their children. You don't have an absolute authority of life and death over your children. So clearly this notion of like an absolute parental authority is bogus. And if we can conclude that, then what? And I take this further than Locke does, because Locke wouldn't dare apply this reasoning to God, but I do. It's like, well, if we can accept limits on a parent's parental authority, then why then can we not question God's unlimited parental authority as author of the universe? So,
I tend to think when I think of both the in a lot of ways, I think the left and the far left and the far right are equivalent, especially like with the religious right, is that there's a lot of what I would call a deferment of responsibility. Like, so why is that right? Well, I don't want to have to think about it. God said so.
Yeah.
Don't trouble me with this stuff. Just do what I told you. that kind of thing, where it's like,
Yeah.
and I think that for them, and in fairness, they're a guy in fairness to a guy like Andrew, it's like he seems to just say that. Well, no, just listen to me. That's all. I'm the authority, and if you don't like it, well, then I'm gonna use force. That's all. And it's like this. The problem I have with the left is more like they deny it, while at the same time they're doing it. They deny they're doing it while they're actually doing it.
They're hypocrites about it, right? They want to pretend as if they are not the thugs and the gangsters. They want to pretend as if they're not. Their philosophy is not inherently just predicated on naked force, when that's really ultimately what it boils down to. Is just naked force. Whereas on the flip side, the religious, religious are also a little bit dishonest about it as well. They want to pretend that it's all, ethics and morality and objective morality, when really it is all just naked force as well. It's, because God said so. Well, why is what he says right? Well, because he has the power to make it so. He has the power of creation. He's all powerful. And so because of this, everything he says goes, essentially. It's fundamentally, to be very reductionist, all totalitarian ideologies literally just boil down to the notion that might makes right. It's literally just, I have the power to make it so it is so. Right. There's no
it's dishonesty. Yeah. The great bit of dishonesty on the left is the chief, the topmost sort of example of that in recent is Antifa. People go out and do every fascist thing in the world and then call themselves Antifa. It's like, you guys do you understand you are the black shirts and the brown shirts? Do you understand that? Like, no, they don't. They like, it's okay when we do it.
Yeah, I love that. And then leftists will make endless memes making fun of people who make that exact comparison, being like, well, actually, Antifa is the real fascist, as if to show that that's like ridiculous. But then they prove it. They prove it to be true over and over again. But of course, that's operating based on the definition of fascist being totalitarian or authoritarian, or just literally just being willing to use naked force against people who disagree with you by virtue of the fact that they disagree with you.
Anyone who disagrees with me is a fascist. Yeah, that's kind of like what it comes down. If you don't agree, it's a ridiculous. It's this reductive sort of. And it's on the religious right. It's the same. Like, if you don't believe in God, well, clearly I have the right to commit force against you, right? So there's this somehow, if you say, I'm not a believer, I'm a doubting Thomas, even like not even necessarily not. It's like, well, then you were cast out.
At the very least, the religious right do have an out, and their out is, well, I don't have to use force on you. God will do that to you in the hereafter.
Yeah.
So that
that's
actually,
also
that out actually enables them to be a little bit more possibly humane, interestingly enough, than the authoritarian left, because the left don't have that out.
Because a Christian can always say, well, you did bad things to people, but boy, God's going to get you later. Yeah. And they can let it go. They can sort of let violence. I mean, I think with Charlie Kirk, with his wife, that what did she do? The thing when she said she forgave him, she's sort of like going, what really saying is like, well, you'll get yours in the end by God.
Yeah.
Which also tones down the whole. I mean, if the Charlie Kirk people, the right, that just right, believed exactly the same as the Antifa left, we'd already be in a massive war. There would be
we'd be in a civil war.
Yeah,
America would be gone. It's
done. Yeah. It's only by virtue of the fact that one philosophy has that out, like you said, again, this out, like, okay, well, I can at least say that God will get you later. That's only out, and we're not in that situation. I don't believe that there is this like, no, dude, if you're going to keep doing that, there's no out for you. I'm not giving you out. I know I got to do something about you.
Yeah.
And it's very irritating for me, as a secular conservative, whatever, who's like looking at what the left is doing and the anti-Western, anti-American, anti-Western, anti-civilization, anti-enlightenment group of people that are out there now just assassinating people.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, something's going to happen. Somebody's going to actually do something. It can't just be, I'm going to wait for God to take care of that later.
Well, then this is, I mean, since God refuses to do anything, and every single time people appeal to him, nothing ever happens. And so then people feel the need to attribute any good thing that happened amongst the bad to God. Well, I mean, I'm getting a little off topic here, but because that is the case, because God doesn't do anything because he doesn't fucking exist, it does fall on us to actually do what's necessary. And so this leads us to ask, well, what then is justice, right? Like, what is the just response? And quite clearly, the just response is to go after the specific people involved. Unfortunately, and it's very surprising to see how many people don't recognize that, where you'll have people on the left being all like, yeah, all conservatives should be afraid to express their views. I saw, like, there was this one black chick actually responding to the whole Charlie Kirk situation, being like, yeah, why did the shooter just shoot Charlie Kirk? He should have shot his wife and kids too. It's like, like, that is such a disgusting mindset to me. Like, why would someone believe that it's somehow just or moral or good to kill a child because of the point of view of their parent? Like, that is such a ridiculous sentiment to me, and yet there are people out there that believe this. Then this is, of course, what leads to, like, you know, things like civil war, because these people aren't pursuing justice. They're just trying to impose their preferences on others and crush anyone who feels differently. They're looking for supremacy. They're not looking for a mutual cooperation, reason, or you know, voluntary interactions with others. And that's the fundamental problem, I think, with people in general, is that they're just not interested in just living at peace with their neighbors.
Well, they have a notion of their preferences are more important than any philosophical basis. You know, like, they claim to believe in equity and equality, but they don't really. They believe in that all that means is I get what I want, and you can't say no to me. That's what they actually believe equity and equality is. I should be able to get things, and you're not allowed to say no to me on those things. You just have to give them to me. You just have to, and I'm not talking about like physical stuff. I'm talking about even like emotional or communal. So like, you sit there and go,
words. You have to call me ma'am, or you have to
say my words. You have to say my words.
It's like,
You have to say my words. You have to, and it's religious. You know, I've called the woke basically a secular puritanical cult for a long time now. That's what it is. It's, you must say my words. You will say my words, and you will. And the worst thing about the woke left, again, this is another thing to give credit to the Christian right where it's due. There's like, doesn't seem to be like there's even a redemption arc on the left. Like, there's not even a road to redemption with them. It seems like once you are cast out, you are cast out forever. It doesn't seem to be like there's even a road to get back into the good graces. You know, there are simply immune people like Jimmy Kimmel, immune no matter what he does. Like, there's this hierarchy, like somehow no matter what he's done in the past, his life or whatever he's done, he's still immune from all criticism of everything he's doing, because he's, I guess, led the way or is part of what they might consider a leader. But if you went against them at any time, you see people who like said, well, you know, I kind of fallen off a lot of these things that you're saying about this. Boom, they're cast out. They're cast into the fires of hell, you know, whatever, their fires of hell. And there's no redemption arc. You know, at least on the Christian right, you could turn around and go, well, I've changed my life around, and they have to re-embrace you. You know, they have to re-embrace you. If you were a complete, you take a woman who is a complete harlot, you know, whatever, her whole life, you know, drugs, alcohol, you know, 400 abortions, and turn around and she turns around and says, well, nope, I found Jesus and I want to get away from that life. And boy, you know, we got to give her the opportunity. We got to give her the redemption arc.
This is ultimately why I view communism. I view like, I view this like modern version of communism to basically be far more formidable to individual rights and to the freedoms of the American people than fundamentalist Christianity.
Oh, I do. I have for a while.
And that's the thing is, you know, I abhor fundamentalist Christianity. I think it's a vile belief system. I think that ultimately, well, Christianity in general, actually, I consider it to be a vile belief system. That doesn't mean I believe that all the people who adhere to it are vile people, because I'm able to make that distinction between the person and the belief system they've latched themselves onto. People are capable of being wrong in good faith. And that, but
Right.
that, of course, that's something that escapes ideologues of all stripes in general. Is they don't seem to understand that yes, people, not all errors are willful errors. People can be wrong about things without malice. There's no evil
Right.
involved in believing in many evil ideas.
Yeah.
It's but it's just the
I believe that the political left in America, well, in the West, but probably elsewhere too, have also been given a lot of justification for their beliefs when we look at the what the media has put out and what literature has put out and all the other forms. I'm a as a guy that's a musician and an artist and that, and I feel like, man, from the time that I was a kid to a lot of the movies I see now, and a lot of these movies I even really like. Don't get me wrong, I think there's a message out there of, like, you talk about nihilism, this constant message of nihilism in a lot of movies and literature and art. And these people just believe they're like I said, there is no truth but force. Um, my hedonistic preferences surpass your actual basic human rights. It's like they just look in the mirror and go, yeah, that's okay, really, that's okay. And it's almost it's I can see why the people on the Christian right are saying they're demonic. They're demonically possessed, because I think normal people who weren't even very religious 20, 30 years ago would look at that and go, what are these people talking about? The cheering for Charlie Kirk's murder? The head of the healthcare there, the healthcare guy that got shot in the back.
oh yeah.
It's like, you mean to tell me there's any percentage of the population that's cheering that isn't in a mental institution already? Where does this get? How did this happen to culture that was ever okay? I don't care who you were. I don't. When I was growing, you go back to my time period when I was young, 80s and 90s, well, 70s and 80s and 90s, really. But if that happened like that, it would be just universally condemned by both sides. Universally condemned. You wouldn't have a politician go on TV and go, well, a lot of people are upset at the medical industry. Those words were, that would be a career ending. If a Democrat came out in 1985 and said, well, you got to understand, people are upset with the cost of healthcare. You're out of office right now. They're putting somebody in your place, and you're gone.
Yeah, it's
That's
ridiculous to me that people can think literal execution to be a fitting punishment for what maybe some alleged grievance about the cost of healthcare. It's just it's disgusting to me that people are like this. But
yeah. If I want to say, even if you accepted, and here's my thing, even if you accepted that the government could sit there and say, this healthcare executive was doing horrible things and making decisions that hurt people, we, the government, are going to arrest him and execute him, like they do in China, right? They've done that with people in China, where, like, somebody failed at their job and they took them out and executed them for failing at some healthcare job. Even if you accepted that premise, which I don't, I outright reject that kind of thing. This wasn't that. This was an assassin. This was an individual killer. It wasn't even something sanctioned by some sort of government, some sort of organized government response to malfeasance on the part of a medical director of some sort of healthcare agency or whatever. This is just some random guy going, well, I'm taking the law into my own hands and killing people. It's like, what? And you're cheering that? You should reject it on that simple basis alone.
Yeah.
You should reject everything about what this kid did.
No, it's crazy though, because at the very least, someone could point to the fact that the CEO had some sort of like real institutional power. Now, obviously, it was just in the context of a private company, and people have options with private companies. If they don't like the services of one company, they can easily go to a different one.
Right.
It's not like he was actually committing some sort of crime against them, unless he was, in which case that would need to be demonstrated. But it's not like the CEO was complicit in any actual crimes against humanity. Whereas in this case of Charlie Kirk, it's literally just opinions. Literally, a man came to a debate armed with opinion and was shot to death. And on the basis of his opinions. And the fact that people somehow find that difficult to condemn, like they find that difficult to Like, and it is heartening to me that many on the left actually are. In the clip we mentioned earlier, Piers Morgan and Anna Kasparian are there absolutely reaming Destiny for his rhetoric. Right? And so we need to give credit where credit is due. This is not a majority of the left that is behaving like this. At least I don't think it is. I don't think this is.
Well, I think
very large
there's a
and vocal minority.
There's a very large. I wouldn't say a minority though. I would say the minority is the Anna Kasparians that have moved away from that.
Really?
And the Piers Morgans that are now going. Holy crap! Like, they created a Frankenstein monster. Now it's like that scene in the movie where Frankenstein finally realizes that his monster is out of control, and like the townspeople were right. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where
I guess really what I need to see is direct evidence one way or the other that is the prevailing point of view. I acknowledge that there's probably just as much evidence for my claim as there is for yours. Like maybe it could be one way or the other, and we just haven't demonstrated it. But
well, did you see the? Let me see if I can find it, because I actually posted on my. It caused quite a stir after Charlie Kirk got about attitudes. Oh, here we go. So YouGov poll on acceptability of the death of a public figure, murder of a public figure. Have you seen that?
No.
Let me put this to you in the chat. Okay.
Huh.
This is astounding to me.
I see. So you've come armed with the facts.
I've come armed with actual information.
Do you generally consider it acceptable or unacceptable for a person to be happy about the death of a public figure they oppose? That's an overbroad question. I'll put it that way.
It is.
I mean, it depends on the reasons for the
go through it.
But
go through it right there. Go through it, because like, look at always acceptable.
Always acceptable, 3%. 4% Democrats, 2% Independents, 2% Republicans. Usually acceptable, 6% for everyone, 7% for Democrats, 6% for Independents, 4% Republicans. Usually unacceptable, 22% of all, 33% of Democrats, 20% of Independents, 12% of Republicans. Always unacceptable, 56% of everyone, 38% of Democrats, 53% of Independents, and 77% of Republicans. And then not sure is 14%. 18% for Democrats, 19% for Independents, and 5% for Republicans. Huh.
So when I look at this chart, and I think, just from a thing, that Democrats, Republican, and Independent, Democrats are twice as much as likely to find it always acceptable. And then when you look at the always unacceptable characteristic side, it's like Democrats are like almost half of Republicans for always unacceptable to do it. That's a mindset to me.
But,
that's a mindset.
I will caution with the twice as much figure is that's twice as much of like what 2%?
Yeah, I know.
Like 4%. Like
but that would probably be
significant.
But that would probably be the extreme far left of it.
Yeah.
When I think about these other figures, I'm thinking of like going up to the always unacceptable. Now you're talking about more moderate Democrats, and even among them,
it's then the usually unacceptable as well. Which I would I think I would fall under the usually unacceptable camp, and the reason for that is because, the reason for that is because there are circumstances where I think there are certain people who deserve to die, and if there are people who deserve to die, I certainly think that. Their deaths very well can be celebrated. I think that someone who is actually a tyrant, someone who is actually involved in the oppression of innocents. If I was a Roman Republican during the nascent days of the Republic, I would probably have rejoiced in the deaths of Tarquin, right? In Tarquin's death, it's like, oh yeah, it's great. This horrible fucking rapist is dead. Amazing. I probably would be happy about that, and I think it would probably be rational to be happy about that.
There's also an age one I'm sending to you, which is interesting because like you say that, but I'm more along the lines of it's pretty much. I tend to fall on that always unacceptable of a public figure, to just, I fall on that end of the spectrum of where it is. Almost regardless of what they're, I think there's a difference between action too and words. Because when I think of public figure, is it they oppose. They didn't say that the public figure like was a murderer.
Yeah.
Or it's just you oppose them.
But I mean, the question is, why do you oppose the guy then? Do you oppose the guy because he actually committed crimes, or what even constitutes opposition? Are you talking about opposition in terms of viewpoints, like a disagreement, or are you talking about opposition in terms of I am actively in conflict with this person, for they have attempted to take me entirely under their power, and I'm seeking to destroy them in turn? These are different things, but they can all be described as opposition. So because of that, the question does seem a little bit overbroad to me.
I think it's that they deliberately do that stuff vaguely, though, because right now what's happening, and I think the reason the left is so much higher than the right, the Democrats are so much higher, is because if you look at, and this is what I mean by the difference by age group, like at this one age group, I think the reason for it has a lot to do with the fact that we now live in a world, and like I told you, like I expressed earlier, about like if any Democrat came out and said, well, it's probably wrong to have killed that CEO, but they would have been fired, you've been out of your job. It's because we've moved to a society where things like words are violence.
Yeah,
I think that
fundamental problem is that they're acting as if they are acting as if the death of someone like Charlie Kirk is somehow equivalent to the death of someone like Joseph Stalin, right?
Yes.
Or Adolf Hitler. It's like they're equating and conflating things that simply are not the same. Charlie Kirk,
right.
He had some views that were possibly bad. He had some views that were possibly good. He was a nuanced person with opinions. And all he did was he came to the table with his opinions and argued for them and debated people on their opinions. There's nothing entailed in those actions itself that constitutes what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez calls an effort to disenfranchise Americans. Because that's basically what she said in the aftermath of his death. Is that, and she attempted to like block the whole commemoration of him in Congress on the grounds that he was attempting to disenfranchise. Like, what the fuck did he do to disenfranchise Americans? Present arguments? He's not actually oppressing anyone. And so people, and that's the problem, is people will love to conflate, oh, this person disagrees with me, they have a different point of view, they're expressing that point of view, that is evil and violent, and therefore they need to die for daring to express such heresy, such blasphemy. I think you can get where I'm going with this.
That's why I say it's like a religious cult too, because it's heresy. You say men can't be women, women can't be men can't get pregnant, and that is a heresy. That's just a heresy. That's no different than the religious going, you denied Jesus going back in time, you denied Mary's virginity, you must be put to death, clearly, right? It's like, and this is where we're at. And when you look at the one on the age group, I think that's where, I look at it and you go like, always unacceptable. It's like, 18 and 29, 44. And 65 and older is 70. I'm 60. I fall in that 63% where it's like always unacceptable.
There's the vagueness of those words. So to be more specific, I guess for me specifically, if we define be happy about the death of a public figure that I oppose as being be happy about the death of a public figure that I like have political disagreements with by virtue of their political disagreements, then I'm always going to be on the always unacceptable. But if the argument, if what the claim means is just that they're on a different side of an issue and they're actively pursuing that issue, and that issue is one that is fundamentally entailed with human rights. Like, let's say it was the death of the Ayatollah Khomeini, who is complicit in so many crimes against so many innocent people. It's like, I absolutely would celebrate his death. And he is a public figure. He absolutely is a public figure, and I absolutely oppose him. But I think it's because I understand, though, the difference between having opinions and participating in the public dialogue and committing crimes against humanity. I think that's the kicker there, is that these people consider having certain opinions to be a crime against humanity.
Yes. And I think that's what the reason I brought up the age chart part of this whole thing, and the link has all the different breakdowns. I think it has to do with the fact that somebody in my generation, that does not mean, that question would never mean somebody who actually went out and blew up a building and killed a bunch of kids. You know what I mean? That word is that question to me immediately means, well, accept a person to be happy with the death of a public figure. Well, yeah, this question is, what did the public figure do? But it's like, no, generally speaking, because public figure to me would mean anyone, including people I disagreed with their opinions on. It would mean anyone. Yeah. It would have to be somebody who did something bad in order for me to have any level of acceptability. And even then, like you talk about the Ayatollah, even then, and maybe I'm just an old softy now or something like that, but it's like, even then, it's like, well, if they remove the Ayatollah and they imprisoned him, that's enough. We don't have to publicly execute him or anything like that. Whereas I would kind of be a little abhorrent to like publicly executing, somebody like the Ayatollah. Or
I think it was even good that Saddam Hussein was killed. I think he deserved to die. I think Uday Hussein deserved to die.
Well, Uday died because he didn't surrender.
Oh yeah,
like it wasn't. It was like, he was a cruel and horrible person. If he surrendered and he was taken in, and then suddenly the guys in the military went and said, "Oh, we're gonna just fucking take him out back and put a bullet in him," I'd be like, "Whoa, dudes, come on."
Well, obviously you gotta have a trial, right? Obviously, if you do capture someone, you can't just kill them. But
I also have this sort of notion that, in a way, where I think the religious right is going to be more effective in spite of everything going on, has a lot to do with the fact that at some point the political center was jazzed up by a lot of this talk of like, get those rich people, oh my God, this and the other. Then when they actually see the blood, they go, whoa, we got to tone it down. And the people are actually saying, like the thing that kills me at Destiny is saying, we got to make Republicans afraid. I don't know if you heard this quote where we got to make Republicans afraid, fear for their lives until they get Donald Trump to condemn everything he's saying. I'm
I'm
terrorism.
Often hearing them say things like, Republicans should be afraid to express their opinions anywhere. Essentially, right. It's such a totalitarian mindset that they have. But
and they don't even see
it. Think that people are going to just react the way they want. They'll just be cowed into fear. It's like, no, people are when confronted with that, they're not going to be cowed into fear. They're going to be indignant. They're going to be filled with rage that anyone would dare attempt to limit the range of their expression through intimidation. It's
right.
It's
right.
It's what.
And I think what he's doing, what they did with that, is what the right, what I think I've seen as an approach, as aggravating I know it is for some people who are like friends of Charlie Kirk. You could see they're seething inside, but they know that the logical and rational way forward is to do what they're doing, which is to gradually still speak out, still keep doing saying that you didn't scare us. We're going to still do what we're doing. And in fact, we're going to expand on it, and we're going to talk even more. We're going to talk even more, because I think at some point the center is going to go, dude, you're the one. What's happened is the mainstream media, in my opinion, and also like guys like Jimmy Kimmel, have successfully for the past 10 to 15 years, made it seem like somehow the right was out there killing people left and right, which is obviously a thing. And now what's happened is they can't deny the evidence. It's happening every day where you're obscuring all the time. The media keeps trying to obscure that. No, this is a left-wing activist that did this. This is a left-wing activist. This is another case of left-wing activist. This is another left-wing shooter. This is another left-wing killer. This is another left-wing. You can't line it up. And more agencies like the ADL and the SPLC are looking like ridiculous. Institutional people are on a real way of, maybe we got there, guys like you and I got there earlier than a lot of the rest of the people, but the average person now is more and more becoming questioning of a lot of institutions. that were held in high esteem, whether it's the college universities, whether it's the ADL and SPLC and all of these other kind of agencies, and they go on. I don't know if I can believe what those people are saying anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a good
So,
thing for the right, because you can inject, like you
Yeah.
say, hey, now, or if you're a Second Amendment community, what people believe about guns and what's happening, that is not true. The statistics.
yeah.
The
Like,
center is
vast
willing to
majority
question.
of gun, like if gun ownership was really the kind of problem that they portrayed as, this nation would not be able to exist.
Right.
But one thing I wanted to circle back to before I forgot, getting back on the topic though, where something I said initially where I suspect it was a vocal minority. I think actually the statistics you presented to me have actually further validated that viewpoint. Now, that says nothing about how the likelihood of someone left wing having a point of view versus someone who's right wing. That's a different question. But what the statistics do seem to bear out, however, is that it is, in fact, though, merely a vocal minority on the left that are celebrating Kirk's death, and that the majority of people with left-wing opinions don't think that political violence is acceptable, at least in this kind of context. That does seem to be what's borne out by the statistics that you presented.
Yeah, I guess my main point is that there's also a generational shift where I think in my generation, if somebody came out and said abhorrent things, outright abhorrent things, abhorrent racist things, abhorrent sexist things, I think my generation would go, well, I think that guy's a jerk, but I don't think he should be killed. Whereas today, it's to the younger generation, like, well, that guy should be killed for saying those things.
Yeah, honestly,
that's a big change.
Yeah, and I think it is in part. This is me being black-pilled, but I think it's in part because of the slow death and decay of American culture. It's this idea that
I would agree with
that you can disagree with someone and hate what they believe in and what they stand for, and yet not hate them and not want harm to be brought upon them. That is a quintessentially American concept.
I agree.
That is not something like that is very common in human history. That is something that is an attitude that Americans pioneered. It's a Thomas Jefferson quote. It's the religious beliefs of my neighbor neither pick my pocket nor do they break my leg. And Thomas Jefferson had a lot of choice words to say about a lot of people's beliefs. He condemned Calvinism as being one of the most evil doctrines ever devised. He absolutely hated Catholicism. But just not to say that he viewed people who believed in Calvinism as being inherently evil by virtue of believing in Calvinism. It's this nuance, this separation between the person and the ideology they follow. That is something that is lost on so many people. And that's honestly, though, on the flip side, why I think they consider it to be violence when someone dares question their ideology. Because they can't separate themselves from their own ideology. They're so, they identify so closely with their beliefs. They also identify other people with their beliefs. And they see the other person has a belief that they believe is evil. That means that other person is evil. And since I am pure, holy, and good, anything that I believe must be good.
It is, and it's funny because there's a mental trick about it all that they fool themselves with, and I think in many ways it's because they want to insulate themselves in case they do something physically violent, and they take action upon their thoughts, that they can insulate themselves from guilt too. Because I think in a certain extent, it's like, I've got to mask my guilt. How do I cover my guilt? How do I mask it? Oh, I say, I will just make that other person a demon. They're actually a demon. And I'm vindicated on all counts, no matter what I do. No matter how I go about doing this, I am vindicated, because that they dehumanize. I've said that I was in an argument a couple of weeks ago with a guy online, and he was tossing out the whole, oh, you're a Nazi, you're a homo, you're an Islam, you're a this, you're a racist, like this. And I kind of think I judo flipped him with leftist terminology. I says, well, you're trying to dehumanize people. That's the first step every fascist would do. Dehumanize their opponents. When you use Islamophobia, when it's to talk about a person or calling them a fascist, you're dehumanizing them. Calling them a Nazi, you're dehumanizing them. So is that what your whole mindset is? Like you want to dehumanize people so you can justify? I saw a meme too. Who said, he says they're not calling you Nazis because they think you're a Nazi. They're calling you a Nazi because then it gives them justification to kill you.
Yeah, it gives them license to commit violence against you, and that's the whole reasoning
Yeah.
behind the tactic of dehumanization. It's like as soon as you are a heretic, as soon as you are an apostate, as soon as you are a non-believer,
Yeah.
as soon as you are a Nazi, as soon as you are a commie, as soon as you are whatever the in-group deems as being less than human, then, well, we can commit violence against you because you are by nature evil by possessing these viewpoints. It's
Right. And that's like just to talk about a personal story of speaking with my father who was in World War II and actually had to kill Nazis in the real world.
yeah,
Yeah, he wasn't walking around thinking he was a great hero. He was like, these were still people. I had to do what I had to do. I got sent there to do what I got to do.
well,
But
I warrant that most of the people that he ended up having to kill were just some German farm boy who was conscripted
right.
to fight for his country. Not even
Exactly.
necessarily someone who wholeheartedly bought into or believed the philosophy of National Socialism. Just some guy who was told that his country was under threat and that he needed to defend it, and given a
Right.
gun to do it.
Right.
And that,
And there's a sort of cartoonish, and hey, I was guilty of it growing up. You watch all these movies about this stuff growing up, and they didn't do it. Interesting, they didn't do this with the communists, which tells you something about Hollywood. They make it so, like, even Indiana Jones movies, they make it so that this thing is such a cartoonish person. These people are such cartoonish, beings that you can, you can take them out and it doesn't matter. There's no moral stain on your hand. Whenever I've talked to anyone who was a veteran, in my dad's age group, or even like Korean War, they're like, look, we had to do an ugly job. Now they weren't Yahoo. Of course, there were Yahoos that are like, running around pretending to be like, or like, oh yeah, look what I did. Look, ain't I a great hero? But most of those guys didn't. They were like, okay, I want to go home. I'm done. We did that. I understood why we had to do it, but it's not glamorous. But we've glamorized that so much. Hollywood is glamorized. Can you imagine if Hollywood glamorized, killing communists as much as they've done?
yeah,
Nazis.
what if like Hollywood became like a Hoppian Discord server? It's
Yeah. Like we would have already wiped like China off the map with nuclear bombs. Like that just would have been the case if Hollywood made those kind of movies. You know what I mean? It would have been, but we don't. And that's why, like, they don't. Nobody treats it as toxic. It's because the culture itself doesn't treat it, even though it's probably objectively more toxic than Nazism ever was. When you look at the death toll and from all the communist
I think
nations.
the thing that's sinister about communism is that I actually had a similar debate with just yesterday. Actually, I sort of argued with a Middle Eastern acquaintance of mine, and he's not anyone that you would know. He's a Christian Middle Easterner that I met through a different Middle Easterner friend, but he argued that Islamic fascism is objectively worse than communism. And at first I disagreed with him, but then I realized something. We were talking about.
Can you explain that?
Say again?
Can you explain? Can you go into detail and explain what your conversation was like? Because that's interesting to me.
Yeah. So he's arguing that, and mind you, he disagrees with both, but his reasoning is that whenever the communists, various communist factions have ruled in various countries in the Middle East, the quality of life of Middle Easterners was better. And you look at countries that were formerly communist, they had a more Western culture ingrained into them, in particular because communism is a Western ideology. Whereas Islamic countries that fall into Islamic fascism, they lived like they're in the 6th century. And I think that is a valid argument. However, worse, like, we're not considering the context in what worse is. See, because my argument is that communism is worse. And the reason why communism is worse is because communism on a global political scale is more effective. Communists are more capable of achieving their goals than Islamic fascists are.
Right.
And that is why I consider communism worse. It's not that the ideology itself is inherently worse. I'd argue Islamofascism, the tenets of the ideology are worse. Just as German National Socialism, I actually think the tenets of the ideology itself are worse than the tenets of communism. And I find the tenets of communism absolutely abhorrent and evil and absolutely vile. Anti-virtue itself. That being said, at the very least, there are certain somewhat noble sentimentalities entailed in the communist psyche. A tiny glimmer of them, whereas this racial animus that drives German National Socialism is just perverse on its face. But that being said, though, the German National Socialists were defeated within the span of, like, what, a 5-year war. Communism was a much more persistent threat because
I think it still is.
It appeals to people's ethical sentimentalities. People want to feel like they're taking care of the people around them, even if they're not doing jack shit to do it. They're just having the government do it for them. People like the idea of people being taken care of, being clothed and fed, and the ideas of progress. And that's another thing. Communists tie themselves to the ideas of progress and this idea of scientific achievement. It's why the Soviet Union and the United States got into this whole race, this whole technological race, is to show which side was more likely to actually progress the human species. Of course, communism isn't actually about that, which is part of the reason why they failed the space race, in comparison to the United States, that is. But ultimately, I think that part of the reason why communism is so sinister and why I think it's worse overall is because it attempts to hijack people's ethical sentimentalities.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's definitely what it does. It does it. That's why, in a way, it's a religion. Where I agree with James Lindsay, he pretty much paints communism as being a religion that has no God. And that it hacks into the same centers of the brain that religion does, without a God and without an actual, even a key ethic. You know what I mean? It's a very, its ethical system is so, going back to the subjectivism, its ethical system is subjective. If we think that's a bad thing is happening, it doesn't matter what we do to change that to everybody's individual liberty. And that whole idea of it's collectivism versus individualism, right? I mean, communism says collectivism is the most important thing. And lots of religions, if you think about it, it's a lot of the same things with religion. It's collectivist in mindset,
Let's live
but
as a
at least in religion,
take care of each other, be nice and kind to each other, and blah,
at least in a religion, it seems like there are some guardrails for individualism. There are certain guardrails. I have a specific problem with Islam because I think much closer to communism, those guardrails aren't as firm as, say, with Christianity or Judaism or, some of the other ones where there are these guardrails for individuality. I think there are much stronger guardrails than there are with Islam, which is why I think he probably sees Islam as worse than communism, because at least in communism, you're not randomly getting killed because I guess you don't believe in God, or you don't believe in some sort of ancient
tenets of Islam. I consider far worse than communism, but I consider communism to be worse in that communism is more likely to achieve its goals.
Yeah. And it also, again, communism hacks your brain. It hacks these people's brain in a way that makes them think that they're justified for doing immoral things that are against the individual, because they just the greater good. I think, who was I talking about? Ayn Rand guy. I can't remember. Was it Ari Schaefer? What's his name? And he was. I was reading a thing because being a fan of Star Trek. Mr. Spock's big line there, like the good of the many outweighs the good of the few, and he's like, that is literally the worst philosophy that could have ever been taught in a science fiction movie. It's essentially communist. You're literally saying, well, if it benefits 51% of the people, then the other 49% of the people should be eliminated if that's what benefits it.
And that's something that people who worship this is something that people who worship democracy as if it was an ultimate end just consistently can't seem to wrap their minds around.
No, they can't.
like, well, there's a reason why people who are philosophically attuned and who understand logic, well, understand at a basic level at least that argument from like a popularity is no argument at all. It doesn't actually mean anything. To say, oh, well, other people are doing it, X percent of people believe this thing, therefore it's true, that's a bad argument. And the reason why it's a bad argument is because there's no evidence that the majority of people believing something is what makes that thing true. What makes something true is, truth is simply a quality in of itself, right? It's a quality of the thing being evaluated as true. It either is simply true or not. It's not made true by believing in it, no matter how many people believe it. And that's the fundamental problem, is that, similar to how earlier I questioned, God's royal legitimacy, his absolute authority to dictate right and wrong to people, the exact same charge can be brought before a mob. The exact same charge can be brought before the majority of people in a people group. It's like, oh, well, all these people out here disagree with you. So, like, who are you to disagree with them? It's like, well, who I am is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is they remain wrong. No matter how many of them feel the same way, no matter how many of them feel like they have the right to coerce me, no matter how many of them feel like they have the right to enslave me and oppress the people I care about. Like, is it simply the case that, like, the minorities must always submit themselves to the will of the majority and just be like, okay, well, the majority says this, so it must be true. The majority says I deserve to live the rest of my life in a work camp, therefore it must be true. It's like, no. It's if democracy, if democratic processes essentially lead to a result that is fundamentally perverse or fundamentally inimical to the rights and freedoms of the individual, fundamentally inimical to the rights and freedoms of myself and the people that I care about, I will not submit myself to that. Granted, of course, that it's an important enough issue to fight about. And obviously being sent to a work camp is a very different issue from being required to buy car insurance. It's like these are issues of very different magnitudes. So obviously picking your battle is important, but there are lines in the sand. And at the end of the day, now this is a common problem with all government, really, is that, like, in general, government cannot really prove or establish this idea of legitimacy, this idea that they are inherently legitimate. For democracy, they attempt to do it by saying we derive our power from the will of the people. For monarchy, they do it from, we get it from patrilinear lineage, right? But, like, neither of these things establish legitimacy. At the end of the day, it's just some people trying to dictate to others. So really what matters is not whether or not the power is legitimate in the dictating. What matters is whether or not the thing being dictated is in fact legitimate. And that is identified through argument, not through submission to the will of the majority.
Well, you can also see the contradiction, or like again another level of hypocrisy, with the idea of, like, we had an election, Trump won the popular vote, but the popular vote suddenly now is not good enough.
Oh yeah, suddenly it's not good enough because they disagree with it, right? And that's the thing, is no one really believes in this idea that something is made right because the majority believes it. I mean, the majority of people in the world don't even believe in human rights.
Yeah.
The majority of people in the world are super religious and think that their religion should be imposed upon others. There are far more Muslims in the world than there are... I think that there are far more Muslims in the world, probably, than there are democratic socialists.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, if the democratic socialists' argument is, oh, you should just submit yourself to the will of the majority, it's like, what majority? What majority of... Where do you draw the lines of who has access to that franchise? It's like, oh, so it's the nation state? Oh, so all of a sudden you believe in the nation state now, so then we have the right to exclude illegals? No, of course not, because they don't want us to, right?
The left's so riddled with contradictions, also largely because I think it's, again, earlier I was talking about the psychology that I've been exploring, and what it is all a philosophy based on emotions, and almost like immediate emotions. It's like, it's always post hoc rationalization of what I feel right now. I feel bad for I don't like Trump, and I feel bad for the immigrants. Therefore, what's my rationalization of why the Constitution doesn't actually permit the president to actually close the borders? What is my post hoc rationalization of why suddenly, Biden could open the borders and let everybody in because that fit my worldview, and it pissed off those conservatives.
See,
So I really like
I
that.
just don't understand that. I
And
actually
he has the
really
right.
despise Trump. I really hate him. I hate his personality. I hate the things that I potentially suspect that he's complicit in. I think that there's a lot of very valid arguments against him. I really actually hate the fact that the guy had to be Trump. That being said, like that hasn't colored my perception as to whether or not immigration enforcement is a legitimate constitutional action. It's weird to me that people will do these things where they refuse to look at the issue for what it is, and they just look at their perception of the issue will be colored by will be colored by how they feel about something that's tangentially associated with it.
Yeah, it's because their entire mind they like to pretend to be rational, but they're not rational. They're not really being rational. Everything that I see going on right now, that everything he's been doing, I really do think he's kind of implementing Project 2025 without saying he's implementing Project 2025. But everything he's actually enacting and doing, I pretty much approve of just about everything he's doing. Because I sit there and I go, yeah, I could see that that's a practical solution to the problem. And even the guys that I'll bring up like Ben Shapiro, for example. Even he, although he does not like, I could tell he's more of that sort of neocon libertarianish kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like what Trump is doing, has to acknowledge that what Trump's doing is actually going to effectually get what the libertarians actually
that's
want.
That's why I'm so conflicted, is because I like a lot of what Trump is doing. The problem is, why the fuck has the administration not released the Epstein files? They have promised when they were campaigning.
My personal opinion, I know he promised it, and I think he did release whatever he could release. There is a lot of stuff that's being held up in the courts by there's a couple of judges, and a lot of people say, well, these liberal judges, everybody's trying to play Calvin ball with who's responsible for holding it up. They are Democrat appointed liberal judges that are holding it, but I don't think the reason they're holding this information is because they want to stick it. They want to keep it hidden because they're protecting somebody. I was listening to Alan Dershowitz talk about the case, and he's barred. He knows very intimate details about what's going on. I watch his show, and he says that, like, I am not, if I spoke about what I know, I would go to jail because I'm under a gag order. He says, you would have to get this judge to say it is okay for me to come out here and talk about what I know. And this judge is still blocking it. And there's a question there, and he brings up where he says, like, yeah, we could release that information. What people need to understand is that there are going to a lot of people who are going to have to lawyer up for false claims, false accusations, or just to protect themselves from what has been said in the court cases that we already know has been investigated and it isn't true. But once it gets out to the public, it's not going to matter once it hits that media stream. So, there's somebody who may have accused, like he says he was accused by one of being one of these Epstein people, Dershowitz himself, and he ended up being completely exonerated because the woman was proved to be, I'll say she was lying, but the reality was more that she was kind of bing, and she didn't know what was going on. She was like a mentally whatever, and that was determined by the courts that she was mentally, deranged, and she was just accusing everybody. And then later on, she recanted and said, I think they put her on whatever lithium or whatever, and she's like, oh, I don't know what I was talking about. No, that never happened or whatever. But he got himself exonerated probably because he's a lawyer himself and whatever, and looked into it carefully. But you got to understand, if that came out, that same thing came out, and even though a lot of the things might have been debunked, that's not going to matter to the public, writ large. They're going to go, so-and-so said that, and then even though that person can go back and say, well, the court didn't admit that information because it couldn't be proven. In the court of public opinion, it doesn't matter that something is or isn't validated, can or cannot be validated.
That may be true, but I still don't see that as a reason not to simply release it all. I guess maybe it's something I'm just not understanding, but I don't see any reason not to just release it all and let people judge for themselves.
See, I've come to a point where I've started to believe that the Epstein thing has become a conspiracy theory on the level of like 9/11 conspiracy theories, and on the level of a lot of other conspiracy theories at this
Yeah.
point, because like it's gotten blown. And by the way, that is the fault. That I will totally place the blame, probably more so, like 2/3, on Dan Bongino and freaking Akash Patel. These guys were going out before the election making a big deal about Epstein, and now they got to sit there and go in, look at the data, look at the official, to go, oh, we were wrong and we were stupid, and now we're in the position.
That is one explanation, but an alternative explanation that I've heard that I cannot rule out of the realm of plausibility is that Trump himself is culpable. That's a possibility that I have to entertain, and I find it difficult to exclude that possibility, specifically because there's so much evidence of his past associations with Epstein. So,
well, you do know that the panel of people that came out and started to talk this, the panel of people who claim that they were abused, did come out and say Trump wasn't part of it. The people who are actually demanding it, that there's like a team of people who've been on the media talking about it,
yeah,
and demanding the release of the files, say no, Trump's not. We've never seen Trump involved in any of that stuff.
All right, I would have to I guess look into that. Is there a
Yeah,
specific...
it's what it is though, is what they're saying. What other people are now arguing, the goalpost has been moved, because what they're arguing now is, well, then who is Trump protecting?
Yeah.
That's how the goalpost has been moved.
What is the specific panel thing that you're talking about? Do you have like a link or something?
There's about five or seven women who claim to be trafficked in that by Ghislaine Maxwell, and claim to have been. One of them is the one who still says that the what is it, Prince Andrew.
I need to know what specifically to search for in order to bring it up.
All right, let me see if I can. I've sort of fallen out of the. I after listening to Alan Dershowitz, I've kind of like come to this point where, like, ooh, because I was kind of an Epstein Island guy, and after listening to what he's talking about, I was like, wow, this seems like it's something that got blown out of proportion by both sides. So let's see. I don't know how to look for this. Epstein accusers.
Yeah, because I mean,
press conference.
What I search in search engine is panel that exonerated Trump from Epstein involvement, and I'm not really seeing anything like that. So I need to know what specifically you're talking about.
September 28th, 2025, the most recent major press conference. During the September 3rd, President Epstein's files appeared with a bipartisan group of U.S. representatives, including Republican Thomas Massie and Democrat Ro Khanna, called Congress and the Department of Justice to release the files, announced they were compiling their own confidential database. Deep dive. I'm just using Elon Musk responded by being named. Elon Musk responded to being named in the document. So Elon Musk was named in it. Steve Bannon, Peter Thiel. I have a bit of a problem with a lot of this chat GPT, by the way, because that's also I found that a lot of these digital
I never use LLMs for research. LLMs are shit for research. Old school search engines are better. LLMs have their uses, but research isn't one of them. LLMs are perfect for writing code. Actually, writing code, perfect for. Walking through a process of reasoning, also perfect for. Refining arguments, also perfect for. But research, no.
I know that Ghislaine Maxwell said that Trump nor Clinton was involved with.
Unfortunately, I'm having a lot of trouble believing that particular testimony because of the weirdness of her testimony. How it seemed like kind of like a hostage situation type thing, where she just It's like,
I understand the reason for the skepticism of it, because
I have a lot of. It felt like it was potentially a coerced testimony, and I'm not saying this as someone who wants to believe it. I like believing that I'm on the right side. You know, that's something that makes me feel happy. But the problem is the whole, oh yes, and Trump is great, and I'm really impressed by his amazing accomplishments as president. It's like, Again, she's like waxing poetic about how great Trump is in her testimonies.
Well, look, I'm sure she's fishing for a pardon. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind she's fishing for a pardon.
Yeah.
I just think that I'd have to go and find the stuff that Alan Dershowitz was talking about on stuff.
That would be,
because a lot of it is like what he talked about with that. Like if you look at the original charges, what he was actually found guilty of, it was 2 girls. One was 22 and the other one was 17. It's the 17-year-old one that got him into trouble. That none of the girls, the actual pattern of behavior was that he liked them young, meaning like college age girls, you know, just out of high school into college age. That's what Ghislaine Maxwell used to like dig up for, were these like college age girls. But it's kind of tough because it's like in a society of sexually promiscuous people, is he bad? Is he because he's clearly, according to Alan Dershowitz, he's not really a pedophile. He liked them. Yeah, I forget what the term is when you're going for like college age girls, whatever. And you're an older guy, and there's like a term they have for that. But at the same time, that doesn't the left accept that as a normal form of sexual interaction? You know, I don't understand this sort of like, you know, this sort of thing. I'm not justifying it. I've always thought it was creepy. Like even when I was younger, like I really thought it was creepy when I was younger. When I would go to a nightclub, I don't want to get into all this stuff, but like you go somewhere and you see a guy that's in his 30s, and I was like I was in college and I'm seeing a guy in his mid 30s in some bar hitting on some girl that I know from college, and I'm like, the hell is this creep doing here? But that was just, I want to say that was just normal behavior. It was only been since the Me Too movement that all this stuff collapsed on a lot of these guys like Harvey Weinstein or, you know, any of these other people, because all of a sudden there became this sort of like, again, from the left, this puritanism on this kind of thing. So, but Alan Dershowitz is like saying like some of these girls were willing participants. The real thing is what the law is. Do you remember when the Subway sandwich guy got arrested for, you know,
Jared Fogle.
Yeah. Like I remember at that time he was facing prosecution, and one of the things he was accused of was in, I think it was New York. And what they said that the prosecutor was going to have a tough time because the age of consent in New York was 16. And the girl he was with was 17. So they're going after this guy, and it's like, well, then you need to change the law of your state, because what are you hanging them on?
Yeah, but
you know what I mean?
Though you can't change the law and then retroactively get someone for doing something before the law was changed. There's
which is kind of what they
constitutional protections against that.
Yeah, which is kind of what they did with Trump in New York with some of the other trials, where it's kind of like, you know, we're going to change the law post facto and then go after you for it. This is where you, like I'd have to call up the stuff. It's very long. The stuff that Alan Dershowitz talks about. And he says, like, in order to get that information out there, those judges have to be willing to say, I am signing off on this testimony. That all the FBI can release is what they have released already on the subject. So I think a lot of stuff, like, you know, he's working for Mossad. Candace Owens, she's just an insane person as far as I'm concerned at this point. Mossad, he's a Mossad agent. I think he was my theory about Epstein is he is doing exactly what Ghislaine Maxwell's dad did, which is he got himself invited to the party with a tape recorder. He got people on tape saying things that are, you know, questionable to the public. And he's holding that, how he became wealthy, for example, and he held that over the head of a lot of people in order to get himself in the right circles.
So like a lot of extortion, pretty much.
Yeah. But even not extortion, because think about it this way. If you could manage this, right? Let's say you pretended to be somehow you get your name out there as some great entrepreneur, and you actually, whatever you had to do, you got a private jet, and then you managed to go to a private club where these executives were at, and you befriended them. You get them on your plane. You say, hey, I'm traveling back there. You want to take a plane trip with me? And take all the girls and all the sex and everything out of it. If you could put yourself in the room with those people with a microphone recording what they're saying, don't you think you would have an incredible insight to game the market and get better at getting money in the market, and just be, if you were flying a wall in all of the corporate offices and you could hear what they were talking about, where they were going to invest their money, where they thought they were going to go, where they thought technology was going to go, and you could put yourself in the room with those people, you are going to make great business investment choices. Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of this was about. There is a little bit of plying guys with booze, plying guys with vacation, plying guys with young girls, even if they didn't touch the girls, just having the eye candy wander around in front of them. That's disarming them so that they start like loose lips sink ships. They're now talking about things. Now he's putting himself in a position where he can make a lot of money. And I think it's it's an age-old thing that's happened over again. And I wouldn't be surprised if when Trump kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago, it wasn't just that he was flirting or whatever, being obnoxious to one of his female workers. It was probably because Trump probably said, "Hey, this guy's gaming me. This guy's stealing my ideas. This guy's, going, telling somebody else what I told somebody at this meeting. And I don't want them to know that. He's not keeping what I'm saying in confidence." And that's another reason why he booted him. And that's this looks to me more like more of a business scam, that they had to discredit Epstein and get him out of the circle because he was selling, he was just, using their information. I found all these things are a lot less impressive when actually the whole truth comes out in my life. It's a lot less impressive and it's a lot less daring. The media makes a lot of money. You got to think the media makes a lot of money out of blowing up everything. The media is most all of them are like Piers Morgan. What does Piers Morgan do? He goes on, he brings up these people who are going to say ridiculous things on his show just to cause controversy, just so he can make more money. And if you could be saying the most innocuous thing in a certain situation, and somebody's going to make up stories about what you were doing and what you weren't. And I'm not saying this stuff doesn't happen. Clearly, sex trafficking happens all over. That's they busted. I think Kash Patel had one of the biggest busts this year. Something like 1,500 people were like arrested and taken who were drug trafficking, but they weren't big name people. They were all like small drug traffickers here. Gangsters, cartel people that he nabbed that would trafficking kids to in and around. And people wanted to be, though, that big fish. They wanted to be this big guy, and I'm beginning to wonder. My whole thing with the Epstein thing has gotten more like, because I was asked me a year and a half ago, and I'm thinking this is the biggest thing in the world, and now I'm at a point where I'm like,
I hope that honestly that's the case, but ultimately, I guess I still don't feel like my fundamental. If that is all the case, then there shouldn't be an issue with just releasing the Epstein files.
Yeah.
And
but like I said, the thing about it is
the situation is made worse by the administration's reticence to actually follow up on what they promised to do. Which
he cannot order those judges to release those case files. That's I mean,
okay, so,
he could ask.
So I guess your contention is that the files that are not being released are not being released because they're currently held under wraps by different judges.
A Florida judge that did hit the first Epstein case where he was first arrested for, right, in Florida, and then there's the New York case where he ended up getting sentenced, and he died, right, get killed, whatever, suicide, whatever, or was murdered, and that case, and then it was also the Ghislaine Maxwell case, which was also in New York in the same court. Which coincidentally, the judge that oversaw those cases are the same judge that permitted all of the attacks on Trump, all of those questionable cases to go against Trump. Yeah. So it's that this guy, the judge there. If I were to criticize anybody or worry about anybody, I would say it's the judge that's still in New York that's still holding a lot of case files. But the Florida judge is also holding up those case files too.
Okay,
and what they're saying,
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
that's
so now certainly Trump could probably put a lot of pressure on the Supreme Court, because I think the Supreme Court could order them to say, no, you're going to release these files, but that's about the only thing Trump could do, is put pressure on the Supreme Court to put pressure on those lower court justices to release the files.